exposed. Flight attendant's unexpected reaction to Black CEO leads to amazing team transformation. Jamie shifted nervously in her jump seat, her heart racing at the announcement echoing through the cabin. Malik, the new CEO, who she had only caught glimpses of in smart suits and sharp ties, was ready to unveil his vision for the airline. It was a big moment, and it felt monumental in a way that made her pulse spike. She had heard the murmurs, the promise of change, the hope of progress, and the swells of skepticism that swirled among the crew. No one could deny the weight of history in this room. It loomed like the flight schedule above them, demanding attention and action. And yet, here she was on the precipice of something she neither fully understood nor knew how to navigate. As the hum of the engines settled into the background, Jamie's mind swirled with conflicting emotions. Should she be excited? Should she be cautious? Her job had always been a source of pride, a way to make ends meet for her teenage son, Max, after her husband's abrupt departure. The thought of Malik, a black man rising to lead the airline, both intrigued and unsettled her. It whispered to her personal prejudices, left there by years of watching the world categorize people based on their race and status. Did Malik truly have what it took to lead, or was he just another face in an expensive suit? Before they continued, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Malik's arrival had quickly set off a ripple effect, excitement and anxiety battling in the aisles like passengers on a turbulent flight. While her colleagues grumbled about new initiatives aimed at enforcing teamwork and improving flight safety, Jamie felt the pressure mounting to choose sides. Each meeting buzzed with tension, and the grip of discomfort tightened around her as they dissected Malik's every move. They wanted loyalty, but what about the loyalty she owed her own growth? Then came the moment that shook her world. A fierce confrontation between Malik and a disgruntled passenger escalated into chaos. The vitriol hurled by the man seemed to strike at Malik's very essence. But instead of breaking, Malik smiled softly and spoke with a calm authority that drew Jamie in. He transformed the volatile situation into a teachable moment, a demonstration of understanding and leadership Jamie had never expected from him. Confronted with her own biases, Jamie felt herself teetering. That incident gnawed at her, sparking a rebellion within. How could she continue to support her colleagues and their entrenched beliefs while battling the burgeoning respect she felt for Malik's fundamentally different approach? She realized that not only was it a professional dilemma, but a deeply personal one, a reflection of her own insecurities and fears wrapped in the complexities of race, leadership, and social responsibility. Now, standing at the threshold of a pivotal staff meeting, Jamie could practically feel the charged atmosphere crackle against her skin. The eyes of her colleagues bore into her, adding to the weight inside her chest. They looked to her for support, loyalty, and approval. But as Malik strode into the room, earnest and unyielding, Jamie wrestled with a fear she never expected. What if embracing change meant letting go of the only identity she had known? Part of her stilled, but with each breath, the tension coursed through her like an impending storm, pushing her towards a decision that felt monumental. This moment could shift everything. Her mouth felt dry, and as Malik scanned the faces before him, the room fell silent. Here she stood, needing to find her voice, but enveloped in the enchantment and trepidation of it all. Would she let the weight of expectation suffocate her newfound understanding? The stakes had never felt higher. Jamie took a deep breath as Malik stepped forward, ready to address them. Her fingers gripped the armrests of her jump seat, her heart racing not just from anticipation but from a quiet, unsettling fear. She could sense the collective inhalation of the room, the crew waiting for Malik to declare his intentions, to solidify his place among them not just as a boss, but as their leader. He started with a story, painting vivid pictures of the airline's history, the challenges they had faced, the triumphs that defined them. With every word, Jamie's walls began to tremble, the echo of Malik's passion displacing her skepticism. It was as if he was weaving a tapestry of collective pride, one she hadn't realized she was desperate to be a part of. She felt something stirring inside her, a flicker of hope, a possibility that maybe, just maybe, this was not just about a new CEO but a new way of being. Yet doubt still loomed, a shadow hovering at the edges of her burgeoning enthusiasm. What if this was all a performance? Would the initiatives he spoke of, rooted in collaboration, innovation, and inclusivity, really take off, or would they crash and burn? She leaned slightly forward, her curiosity sharpening, urging her to open up. Malik shared specific objectives, proposed workshops focused on redefining teamwork, and ways to enhance their customer service. Each initiative sparked a mix of excitement and skepticism from her colleagues. They questioned, they scoffed. Jamie sensed the electricity of their opposition and recognized her own hesitance mirrored in their frowns. A tension welled in her chest, a desire to break free from her self-imposed cynicism. As Malik engaged with their critiques, his steadiness unfaltering, something shifted in Jamie. For the first time, she began to see a clearer roadmap, not just for the airline, but for herself. His confidence ignited something deep within her, a realization that she had been living inside her own bubble of doubt for far too long. "Change isn't easy," Malik said, his voice cutting through the whispers. "It requires courage, and it means facing our biases and assumptions, especially when they are rooted in the past." She could see the flicker of understanding in his eyes when he glanced her way, an unspoken challenge to weigh her own beliefs. In that moment, an agonizing choice crystallized before her. She could either remain anchored in what was familiar, what her colleagues clung to, or she could embrace this unsettling potential, wrestle with her fears, and chart a path toward growth. Would she dare venture into unknown territory and explore this new dynamic? A hand shot up in the back, the voice of dissent. Jamie felt a sinking sensation. Her colleagues were calling for Malik's resignation, echoing their mistrust in a familiar refrain of disbelief. Her heart raced at the thought of stepping forward to speak out, to defend the new vision in front of her colleagues. But the silence engulfed her, a heavy blanket of uncertainty weighing her down as Malik remained composed, an unexpected warmth radiating from his patience. Jamie's blood thrummed in her ears. She realized this was not simply about loyalty to Malik or the airline. It was about loyalty to her own growth and the version of herself she envisioned beyond this moment. The crunch of her own interior conflict echoed louder than her colleagues' dissent. The time had come for her to face her own demons, to align her beliefs with her actions. Would she give voice to her evolving perspective, the one Malik seemed to awaken within her, or would she silence her new truth under the weight of her past? Taking a deep breath, she felt a tremor in her resolve. This next step could reshape everything, not just for her, but for those around her. Would she find the courage to speak, challenging not just her co-workers, but her own ingrained biases? In that charged room, Jamie realized the stakes had just escalated, and the moment demanded a response. Would she seize the opportunity or let it slip away? The silence hung like a dense fog, smothering her thoughts and compressing her self-doubt. Jamie's pulse quickened, her mind racing through scenarios of what could happen if she chose to speak. What would her colleagues think? Would they deride her for siding with Malik? Or would they see her newfound clarity as a commitment to growth? Each question seemed to ripple through the air, urging her toward a decision. Malik caught her eye again, this time offering a silent encouragement that propelled her into action. She rose from her seat, the motion feeling both exhilarating and terrifying. The eyes of her colleagues pierced through the space, stares formed from skepticism and intrigue. Was she ready to share her thoughts, emerging bravely from the cocoon of familiarity? "Everyone, can I please have your attention?" Jamie's voice trembled slightly, betraying her internal chaos. She felt unaccustomed to the stage she found herself on, but the yearning for authenticity surged to the forefront of her intentions. "I know many of us feel hesitant about the changes being proposed. I was one of those people." She glanced around, gauging the reactions. Frowns remained dominant, yet the tension shifted. Perhaps they were intrigued. Jamie took another deep breath, steadying herself as she continued. "But what if this is actually a pivotal moment for us? What if we are not simply protecting our old ways, but blocking our potential for real transformation. I've seen firsthand how fear can paralyze progress, and I don't want to contribute further to that cycle. There it was, she had spoken her truth, but a core of dread settled in her stomach. What had she just unleashed? She glanced at Malik, who looked visibly pleased, perhaps reminiscent of the barriers he had faced. His affirmation ignited a spark. Yet that spark drew flames from her co-workers. "You're just buying into his show." A voice piped up from the middle of the room. Jamie's instinct was to shrink back, to retreat into the role of submissive listener, but she refused that instinct. "No, it's more than that," she countered, surprised by the firmness in her own voice. "It's about taking a risk on what we could become. Malik's proposals invite us to become more than we are, to challenge our old narratives and build something meaningful together. I want to be part of that shift." With each word, the hesitance that had long shackled her began to dissolve. She pressed forward, sharing a reflection on how stale routines had hindered her own career growth. "I've held tightly to outdated mindsets, but if we stay comfortable, we'll never discover new ways to reach our shared goals." The room felt charged with a different energy. Now the air was electric, each person poised on the edge of a reckoning. Jamie could sense the crackling tension, as if the room itself had split open, revealing an aperture of possibilities. The ripple effect was undeniable. The dissenters, still skeptical, appeared contemplative. Whether they were moved by her words or merely taken aback remained to be seen. Malik nodded slowly, his approval evident in the shift of his posture. "Thank you for sharing that, Jamie. Takes courage to speak up. And what you touch upon is precisely what we're aiming to cultivate, a culture of openness, where each of you feels empowered to contribute." The moment hung palpably, the resonance of her declaration wrapping around Jamie like a cloak of newfound purpose. Yet, her heart drummed with an unresolved tension. She had taken a step into the unknown, but the real challenge lay ahead. Would her colleagues genuinely embrace this shift, or would old habits prevail? As the meeting edged toward a close, Jamie's thoughts churned with anticipation. What would happen now? Would they harness this energy and leverage the discomfort into fresh opportunities? The shadows of doubt had shifted, but they were not gone. A deeper inquiry began to ferment within her. Was this merely about change from others, or did she need to confront her own reluctance to lead from within? Determined to uncover the obstacles still lurking in her mind, she understood a greater part of her journey was just beginning. And in the depths of her ambition, one underlying truth remained. Waiting to unveil itself, her biggest challenge was yet to come. Would she muster the resolve to confront what truly obstructed her growth? As the meeting concluded, Jamie's body felt simultaneously drained and electrified. She had momentarily broken free from her self-imposed limitations, yet the reality of her position settled in like a weighty shroud. She found herself lingering as her colleagues filed out, some engaged in hushed conversations, others simply walking past her, their expressions unreadable. Was it hope she had seen spark in their eyes, or merely confusion? Her heart raced as she replayed the moment of vulnerability. She could easily slip back, retreating to the safer shadows of her previous self, but she sensed that would only cost her further growth. In the days that followed, Jamie wrestled with her feelings each morning. She framed her thoughts around the quiet monsters of self-doubt that lingered. The recurring question of whether she had made a positive impact haunted her. Had she merely stirred the pot, or had she ignited a change? The uncertainty both thrilled and terrified her. A week later, she entered the office, energy buzzing with a mixture of anxiety and anticipation. Malik was already present, going through documents, an aura of focus about him that was infectious. Seeing him, Jamie was reminded of his words, the call to foster a culture of openness. What did that truly mean for her? "Morning, Jamie," he greeted, looking up as she entered his office. There was a supportive warmth in his gaze that disarmed her. "Morning, Malik. I've been thinking about what we talked about the other day. How can we really get our team on board with these changes?" His smile widened slightly, eyes sparkling with a mixture of pride and encouragement. "It's about connection and building trust. Keep sharing your thoughts. Sometimes it only takes one voice to inspire another." You've already taken that first step. Jamie nodded, feeling fortitude swell within her. Perhaps she had initially underestimated the power of sharing vulnerabilities openly. What if we had a brainstorming session this week? She suggested, initially tentative but sensing the rightness in the proposition. A space for people to voice their fears and ideas regarding the upcoming changes? Malik leaned back thoughtfully. That's a commendable idea. Not all will be comfortable, but allowing them a platform to express their concerns can foster trust. You leading that will further establish your voice in the team. His affirmation felt like a shield against her self-doubt. Jana was struck by the significance of that role, facilitating dialogue and encouraging expression. Through that, she could slip into the shoes of a leader, not just an observer. Realizing that she had a unique opportunity to propel herself farther into leadership, Jamie felt a flicker of exhilaration. But as soon as she embraced it, another thought crept in. What if she failed? What if opening that space only intensified the descent? Steeling herself against the wave of uncertainty, she decided to confront it head-on. The very essence of leadership lay in facing challenges, not avoiding them. She drafted an email to the team, tentatively inviting them to an open session to share their insights and anxieties. Yet, as she hit send, doubt welled back up. Would anyone show up? Would they see her as a leader or just another peer trying to help? The thought of facing potential rejection unnerved her. But then again, wouldn't it also serve as an opportunity to break further barriers? The clock ticked down, each passing moment amplifying her anxiety about the upcoming session. Every ounce of courage she summoned felt countered by the shadow of fear lurking in the back of her mind as the day of the session approached. She couldn't shake the feeling that the real challenge lay not just in leading the discussion, but in accepting her capability to influence change, and the potential ramifications that came with it. It was about to become a pivotal moment. Would she truly become a catalyst for transformation within her team, or would she fall back into the comfort of silence? With the session fast approaching, Jamie knew she could no longer avoid addressing not just her colleagues' fears, but her own. A confrontation loomed, one that would determine whether she would stand firm at the helm of change or shrink back again. The morning of the brainstorming session arrived, and Jamie moved through her morning rituals with a heightened sense of urgency. Each step felt deliberate, yet riddled with tension. The familiar hum of the office blended into an unrecognizable swell of anxiety as she gathered her notes, contemplating her strategy. As she entered the meeting room, she took a moment to center herself. The space remained subdued, devoid of the energy she had hoped would bubble up amidst her colleagues. The table gleamed under the fluorescent lights, a stark contrast to the anxiety swirling within her. Would the usual suspects show up? Would they care to share? She pulled in a deep breath, knowing the looming confrontation with her deepest fears, both personal and professional, was inevitable. Minutes ticked by, and one by one, team members trickled in, their faces revealing a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Jamie's heart raced. Was this what she had envisioned? As they all settled into their seats, she felt both vulnerable and empowered, the weight of her prior encounters blending with hope. Would they sense her sincerity, her need for connection? Thanks for coming, everyone. She started, trying to find her voice amid the surge of self-doubt. I wanted to create a space where we could discuss our thoughts and feelings regarding the changes ahead. I know things have been uncertain, and I truly believe that by having real conversations, we can find common ground and move forward together. A couple of her colleagues exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable. Jamie pressed on, determined. It's okay to have fears and questions. I certainly do. I think sharing them could help us all. The silence was oppressive, weighing down on her as she sat in front of a group that seemed to teeter between participation and retreat. Then, Sarah, a relatively new member of the team, broke the stillness. I guess I wondered if anyone really cared what we think, she admitted, the tremor in her voice piercing through Jamie's bubbling anxiety. Jamie leaned in, heart pounding. Care. We're all in this together, and it's important for us to feel heard. What are your thoughts? A ripple of murmurs began to flow, and Jamie clung tightly to her purpose, unsure if she would lose the fragile momentum that was building. These were the kinds of conversations that mattered most, yet anxiety clung persistently at the edges of the unfolding dialogue. One by one, her colleagues began to express the frustrations that had built up over time, revealing frustrations with management, fears regarding job security, and skepticism toward the future changes. Jamie listened intently, convinced that every vulnerability shared brought them closer to a more cohesive team. As voices rose and fell, she sensed a shift. Ideas flowed, and solutions began to form, as if each person present shared the weight of responsibility to one another. And slowly she started to feel a sense of ownership in the process. The real test, however, was still looming. Could she manage to pull together this fragmented energy and harness it into something constructive? Following the session, an electrifying residue lingered in the air. Jamie gathered feedback, noting both the positives and the challenges ahead. Reflecting on the experiences shared, she noticed her mind racing, as the constraints of self-doubt slowly began to loosen their grip. Though the session didn't resolve everything, Jamie realized that it unlocked something transformative both for her colleagues and herself. Her ownership of the process ignited a flicker of confidence she hadn't fully recognized before. Yet, deep within, a question nagged. Was this just a momentary reprieve from her insecurities? Or had she truly laid the groundwork for a paradigm shift within her team? The real challenge lay ahead. Jamie felt the tension of not knowing if her leadership would be accepted or challenged significantly. Outwardly, she appeared composed, but inside, a storm of anticipation brewed. If she could navigate this crucial juncture, perhaps she could officially step into the role of the leader that Malik had envisioned for her. But first, she would need to address the most pressing question of all. Would she be brave enough to share her own fears and uncertainties next time, thus setting a deeper example of vulnerability? The groundwork was laid, but a storm of vulnerability awaited her in the face of that next challenge. The day after the brainstorming session arrived with a stark clarity that filled Jamie with a mix of excitement and trepidation. As she made her way into the office, each step resonated with the determination to push beyond her previous limits. Yesterday's discussions echoed in her mind, a symphony of shared vulnerability and budding camaraderie that she reveled in. Yet the lingering question remained. How could she take that initial momentum and translate it into something lasting and transformative? After arriving at her desk, she found herself sifting anxiously through feedback forms. Each response was a window into the shifting dynamics of her team. Grateful for their honesty, she also felt the weight of her responsibility to address those concerns with authenticity. She'd ignited a spark. Now, she needed to feed it. That afternoon, armed with insights and an evolving sense of purpose, Jamie convened a smaller team meeting. The invitation was deliberate. She wanted to build upon the environment cultivated in the larger session and transform lingering doubts into actionable plans. Yet, as she arranged her notes, a flash of doubt surfaced once more. What right did she have to lead them? Surely, they would see through her facade. Pushing aside that negativity, she introduced her agenda. I want to explore how we can implement some of the ideas from our last discussion, she began, her voice steady but laced with an edge of vulnerability. I've been thinking of ways we can collaborate more effectively and ensure that everyone feels valued and heard. Reassured by a nod from Sarah, Jamie pressed on, fully aware that she needed to act on her commitment to openness. Before we dive into specifics, I'd like us to revisit some of the concerns that were raised. I'll start. I've often worried about my role and whether I'm truly equipped to lead all of you. The collective breath in the room hung heavy with surprise. Jamie could see eyes widening, her admission seemingly stripping her of the protective barriers she had built as a leader. Still, the silence that followed didn't crumble her resolve. Instead, it gave her strength. I have my fears too, she continued, vulnerability radiating from her like warmth. But I believe that acknowledging them can help us form stronger bonds. Gradually, the team responded, each member sharing their own insecurities and uncertainties. What had begun as a meeting of strategy transformed into a genuine sharing space where they all took turns voicing their emotions. New ideas emerged, enthusiasms ignited, and conviction flourished. Jamie felt the heat of collaboration wrap around her like a newly forged shield against her past insecurities. In that moment, clarity washed over her. Words had power, and vulnerability invited strength, the very essence of leadership. Yet a different challenge lurked in the shadows. Would they continue to offer insights if she exposed her fears on a larger scale? As thoughts raced within her mind, she knew she had to take this newfound synergy to the next level. She glanced at each team member, feeling a tangible connection. Let us celebrate our fears and ideas. How about we create an open forum more frequent, where we can voice concerns and strategize solutions together? The atmosphere buzzed with eager nods and murmurs of agreement. Jamie's proposal resonated deeply, a beautiful echo of their newly discovered unity. Yet amid the collective excitement, an unsettling thought gnawed at her. Was she ready to share her aspirations with management? Would her leaders recognize her efforts? Regardless of the lingering uncertainties, she resolved to step boldly into that realm. A new sense of purpose ignited in Jamie, but she hadn't fully shed the husk of doubt wrapped around her. The next step loomed before her, and now, perhaps, the moment had come to confront the resistant barriers outside her team's closed circle. With determination flickering in her heart, she prepared for the inevitable confrontation that awaited her beyond the office doors. The time had come to face the greater challenge, to advocate for her team's voice and her own amidst management's towering walls. What would it mean for her journey as a leader, and could she reveal herself one more time for the sake of her team's future? Fueled by a blend of anxiety and exhilaration, Jamie found herself standing outside the glass doors of the executive suite the next morning. The towering walls felt less like barriers now and more like a chance for her to prove herself not just to management, but to her team. They were counting on her. With a deep breath, she stepped inside, her resolve sharpening with each echoing stride across the polished floor. Her heart raced as she entered the spacious conference room, a stark contrast to the cozy atmosphere of her team meetings. The executives looked up from their laptops, their expressions a mix of curiosity and indifference. This was a different environment, one that felt like an inquisition rather than a collaboration. Jamie felt an overwhelming urge to retreat, but she steadied herself, reminding herself that her purpose was larger than her fear. "Thank you for accommodating me today," she began, her voice clear but tinged with apprehension. "I wanted to share some insights from my team regarding our new initiatives. They've come up with ideas that could really enhance our operations and morale." Murphy, the VP of Operations, raised an eyebrow, a hint of skepticism creeping into his demeanor. "And what makes you think your team has the capacity to suggest changes? They're just employees, after all." The statement hung in the air like a leaden weight. Jamie felt the heat rise in her cheeks. Hadn't she just spent so much time fostering a culture of equality and empowerment? "With respect, I believe that the best ideas often come from those on the front lines," she countered, her voice gaining strength. "They're the ones who understand the nuances of the operations better than anyone else." Unease flickered across the room as her words challenged an unspoken norm. Somewhere within her, a mix of courage and determination surged. This was not just about her team's voice. It was about dismantling the dismissive attitudes ingrained within the company culture. "Let me show you some feedback we gathered," Jamie continued, sliding a report across the table. "This isn't just about operational efficiency. It's about engagement. We've seen a real shift in morale since we built our last project together, and I truly believe it can translate into performance as well." Far from feeling emboldened by her confrontation, Jamie felt the mounting pressure of expectations with each passing second. The executives, especially Murphy, scrutinized her with a calculating gaze. She couldn't help but wonder if she had misstepped. Would they dismiss her insights as naive idealism? Or would they see the value in her approach? "Interesting point, Jamie," said Evelyn, the CEO, breaking the growing tension. "But if we're going to approve any of these changes, we need more than just feelings. We need metrics, projections, results." The response cut deeper than Jamie anticipated. The lingering doubts about her legitimacy in this world surfaced again. Were her team's insights valid if they couldn't be measured? Would she be reduced to a mere advocate for ideas without substance? In that moment, she realized what was truly at stake: the authenticity of her leadership amidst the harsh scrutiny of the corporate hierarchy. Could she influence change without conforming to rigid standards? And more importantly, could she cultivate belief in herself as much as she did in her team? Returning to her team's collective vision, Jamie spoke once more, her confidence solidifying. We can set up metrics to evaluate these initiatives based on both performance and employee satisfaction. But it starts with believing in the capabilities of our people. Evelyn nodded thoughtfully, a flicker of interest igniting in her eyes. It sparked a glimmer of hope that Jamie clung to. The potential for transformation loomed, yet the path remained arduous. As the meeting progressed, Jamie struggled between holding onto her stance and bending to meet management halfway. The reality dawned on her. Her aspirations for her team echoed her own desire for validation. She was navigating through unfamiliar terrain, where acceptance and rejection fought for dominance. Finally, as hours trickled by, Jamie left the conference room feeling weighed down by the paradox of progress. While she'd successfully planted the seeds of her team's vision, would they flourish, or would she expose herself to disillusion? As she sat at her desk, uncertainty buzzed within her. Of all the risks she had taken, this felt monumental. The next phase of her journey would demand greater resolve. How far was she willing to go to stand by her beliefs, even if it meant confronting those who held the power? The question loomed silently, a daunting shadow over her emerging aspirations. Jamie sat at her desk, the contrived chatter of the office around her dull compared to the high-stakes tension of the meeting. In the hours that followed her presentation, her mind churned through potential responses from her team, each iteration thickening the cloud of doubt that had settled over her. The executives had seen her vulnerability, the moment when a glimmer of resistance shone through. Yet, that same flash of courage felt quickly overshadowed by an urgency of compliance. She had wanted to issue a challenge that would resonate with her team, cultivate a collective spirit, but now those hopes felt fragile amidst the ruthless pragmatism of upper management. Even after the meeting concluded, her heart pounded. The ambiguity of their reaction gnawed at her, feeding a frenzy of what-ifs that blurred her vision. "Hey, Jamie." A soft voice broke the unsettling thoughts. It was Alex, one of the new analysts. That was pretty ballsy in there. Not everyone would have had the guts to stand up like that. A flicker of warmth surged within her at Alex's praise, yet it felt insufficient against the rising tide of doubt. "Thanks, but it's not about guts. It's what I should have done all along. I just hope I didn't jeopardize anything for you guys." Alex leaned against her cubicle. "Look, from what I've seen, your team respects you. They need someone who believes in them." The sincerity in Alex's expression caused a momentary pause in her spiral of doubt. "Yeah, but what if they don't take me seriously anymore? What if I can't deliver the results they're demanding?" Jamie glanced at her computer screen, a shadow of insecurity flickering across her features. "Then find a way to deliver. Measure the satisfaction like you said. It's all part of this journey we're on, right?" His eyes held a sincerity that cut through her anxiety, nudging her forward. She realized then that she had spent too long anticipating failure instead of strategizing for growth. As the day wore on, ideas began to crystallize, swirling around in her mind and merging into a tangible plan. Jamie decided to gather her team for an open discussion, not just to relay what happened in the executive meeting, but to collaborate on how to address the executive's demand for metrics. The gathering in the conference room was both exhilarating and nerve-wracking. She can feel their anticipation as they settled in, their faces raised with curiosity. "All right, team," Jamie began, her voice steadied by a newfound resolve. "I've talked to the executives about our initiatives, and while they were receptive, they want to see the numbers, the real impact. I need your help to turn our ideas into something measurable." Her team exchanged glances, their expressions intermingling excitement with the daunting challenge ahead. One voice spoke up, tentative yet courageously adamant. "We can create the metrics we need but also tell our story. It's our experience that gives the numbers context." "Yes, that's exactly the spirit," Jamie affirmed, her excitement igniting further discussion. They began brainstorming actionable steps, tangible metrics that wouldn't just satisfy the executives but also embody what made their initiatives valuable. Ideas bounced around the room, each contributing vivid threads to a tapestry of strategic planning and creative assessments. As Jamie looked around, she saw moments of vulnerability morphing into collaborative strength. Can we do weekly surveys to gauge morale? What if we tied project outcomes directly to team engagement? Someone suggested, and with each inquiry, Jamie's doubts dissipated. They were becoming architects of their destiny, not victims of upper management's scrutiny. The atmosphere thick with innovation, Jamie felt a powerful shift. This was more than meeting expectations. It was about crafting a narrative where their voices mattered. She had challenged the status quo, and with her team behind her, she was no longer just a leader. She was part of a movement within her own organization. As they wrapped up, Jamie sensed a palpable shift in energy, a refusal to settle for invisible contributions while seeking clear validation. The culminating excitement sparked a realization she could forge metrics, but it took the collective will of her team to execute the vision. But as she returned to her desk, exhilaration was tempered by an understanding of a new obstacle. If the executives required proof, what could she really provide? Were they ready to embrace what her team was about to unveil? The answers felt critical, yet uncertain. The notion of confrontation with management loomed once again. Could she push through the natural resistance of an established hierarchy? It was a looming confrontation richer with potential that extended beyond just empirical outcomes. The next few days would be critical, teetering on the tightrope of uncertainty and discovery, a path strewn with the potential for herself and her team to illustrate their worth against an unyielding corporate mindset. Little did she know, the time had come to face the final showdown of authenticity versus acceptance. In the days that followed, Jamie found herself immersed in an internal struggle between enthusiasm and apprehension. She had summoned the courage to rally her team, yet the looming specter of the upper management's demands haunted her every decision. Her mind raced with ideas for metrics, but each potential solution felt like a dance on the edge of a cliff. One misstep could lead to catastrophe. Each morning, she arrived at the office earlier than usual, consumed by a relentless desire to refine their plan. The ticking clock on her desk served as a harsh reminder of the limited time they had before the executives demanded results. Her desk transformed into a battlefield littered with notes filled with potential metrics and strategies that still felt too theoretical. The idea of transforming team insights into valid data seemed both exhilarating and daunting. "Jamie, you're going to burn out if you don't step back," Alex remarked, worry lacing his tone. She offered a small, distracted smile, appreciating the concern but feeling no inclination to pause. "I know, I just need to nail this down. If we don't deliver, everything we've worked for could crumble. You won't let that happen. Remember, collaboration is key. We need everyone's perspective." His support served as a lifeline, yet she still felt the weight of expectation pressing down on her shoulders. Each conversation with her teammates bore fruit. Their ideas converged into a clearer vision. As they worked together, the bond deepened, a shared understanding blossoming amid the stress. Still, deep within, uncertainty clawed at her resolve. What if their best efforts still faltered? What if management rejected their work, forcing them back into compliance with the same sterile expectations she had tried to escape? The morning of the presentation arrived, clarity mingling with nervous electricity. Jamie stood in front of the gathered executives, all eyes fixed on her, discerning and appraising. She could feel the tension in the air, a palpable reminder of her earlier confrontation with the same audience. Could she find the words to articulate the value of her team's proposals? "Thank you for joining us today," she began, her voice measured but firm. Each word felt like a calculated risk, a step into uncharted territory. "Today, we're not just sharing metrics, we're showcasing how our projects have the potential to affect change. This is who we are and what we strive to be." Throughout her presentation, Jamie weaved personal anecdotes about her team's efforts, illustrating the emotional aspects behind the numbers. She emphasized the importance of engagement and experience, anchoring their outcomes not just in data but in genuine stories. While projecting graphs and statistics, she kept returning to the narrative thread that bonded her team. But just as the presentation reached its crescendo, an unexpected question from Mrs. Hayes, one of the more traditional executives, cut through the atmosphere. "What happens if the metrics don't support your claims? How do you plan to counter that?" A moment of silence engulfed the room. Jamie's pulse quickened. The query was direct and piercing, echoing her own fears. It felt like a knife to her aspirations. Yet in that moment, a flicker of defiance ignited. "We adapt," she said, her voice steadying. "We embrace the results, no matter the outcome. What if the data reveals weaknesses? Then we learn and adjust our strategies. We're committed to evolution, to transparency. If something doesn't work, we won't hide behind numbers. We'll innovate." The words felt liberating, reflecting the journey she had taken with her team. She sensed the shift in the room, the tentative nods from her colleagues, the far-off looks of contemplation from the executives. Jamie understood that vulnerability itself was a strength, one that could lead to understanding and creativity. As the meeting concluded, Jamie absorbed the reactions around her, the mixture of curiosity and skepticism hanging in the air. Yet, she allowed herself a moment to breathe, realizing she had held her ground, pushing back against limiting beliefs and defying the rigid confines they had all grown accustomed to. But as she stepped out of the boardroom, a new question surged within her: would they accept the risk of innovation, or would the comfort of compliance prove stronger? The reality of possible rejection loomed, sharpening her determination to redefine success not just for her team but for herself. Jamie now stood at a crossroads: to continue fighting for authenticity while chaos reigned, or to submit to the familiar expectations of management, a choice that could redefine who she was as a leader. Each path sparked new doubts but also new possibilities, a precarious balance to navigate in the coming days. In the distance, she saw the familiar figure of Alex approaching, an unlikely ally ready to discuss the path forward. With uncertainty thick in the air, Jamie gathered her thoughts, preparing to face whatever came next. Would they have the courage to persevere in the face of potential backlash? Or would the entrenched resistance of the executive world ultimately stifle their vision? The stakes had never felt higher. Jamie had retraced her steps back to the office, the weight of the previous week still lingering in the air. The duality of triumph and apprehension hung heavily on her shoulders. Despite her breakthrough with the executive team, she grappled with an underlying truth. Transformation extended beyond one presentation and echoed louder in the daily choices she needed to make. Determined to maintain the momentum she generated, she gathered her team for a follow-up meeting, eager to solidify their plans and tackle the daunting challenges ahead. The energy in the room felt different, an undercurrent of hope mingled with anxiety. "Thank you all for being here today," Jamie began, her voice ringed with sincerity. "What we've accomplished isn't merely a set of metrics. It's a foundation for change. And change is what we're going to drive together." As she looked around at the eager faces of her colleagues, Jamie felt a surge of confidence. They had voiced their concerns and shared their struggles, a testament to the trust they now placed in one another. This shift was not just tangible, it was palpable. Proposals began to flow, each idea building upon the last. A collaborative spirit infused every discussion. "Can we introduce monthly check-ins to track our engagement?" suggested Sarah. "And potentially a mentorship program to foster new talent?" added Marco. Jamie nodded vigorously, her heart swelling with a burgeoning pride. Their collaboration formed the bedrock of innovation. This was not just her leadership, it was their collective vision. Yet amidst the triumphs, the fear of judgment from upper management loomed. Discussions about the inevitable presentation of their progress to the board painted a backdrop of tension. What if their ideas met resistance? What if they were deemed insufficient? Understanding this was part of the challenge. Jamie steeled herself for the confrontation ahead. "It's crucial we also craft a clear narrative about our journey," she told her team. "We're not just numbers, we're a story of growth and resilience." They all nodded, affirming a commitment to authenticity that had characterized their recent efforts. Days turned into weeks, each meeting fueling her resolve. Jamie had initiated progress reports showcasing not just data, but transformations in employee morale, engagement, and overall agency. Each report became more than statistics. They illustrated people as stories, igniting an emotional connection to their work. As the deadline for the next board presentation approached, Jamie felt her confidence swell. The fear that had once felt immovable began to shift. The team had shown her that the path to change was in their grasp. They could navigate the demanding demands of the corporate culture together. When the day finally arrived, Jamie gathered with her team in the conference room. As they stood before the executives, she led the presentation, poised and prepared. The visuals creatively showcased their journey, displaying not just metrics but stories of team triumphs along the way. With each slide, the room was captivated. Their narrative unfolded the commitment to growth tangible in every data point, every shared experience. When the questioning began, Jamie answered with clarity and confidence. Change often requires learning from failures, and we're committed to that iterative process, she stated, brimming with conviction. The executives, who once seemed distant and critical, now appeared engaged, their expressions shifting as they processed the information. Jamie felt a wave of relief wash over her when Mrs. Hayes nodded, acknowledging the emotional resonance of their presentation. Perhaps, just perhaps, they were beginning to understand. The culmination of rapport, transparency, and shared experiences resonated. When Evelyn commended the team for their collaborative spirit, Jamie felt a sense of accomplishment swell deep within her. It was as if she had finally laid bare her past insecurities, transforming them into a powerful narrative of resilience and shared vision. With the presentation concluded, Jamie stepped out of the room, her pulse thrumming in rhythm with the exhilarating pulse of progress. The moment felt euphoric, her mind racing not just at the success of the meeting, but the realization of her transformation. The woman who once resisted change had become a driving force behind AI. In the following weeks, initiatives stemming from their proposals took root. Employee engagement soared, and the narrative of transformation echoed throughout the corridors of the airline. Jamie's role evolved from a hesitant participant to a recognized leader who had proven her ability to effect change. Her colleagues rallied around her, buoyed by a shared sense of purpose. As the season changed, so did Jamie. She embraced her newfound identity not just as a flight attendant, but a leader who would face challenges head-on. A woman who proved that vulnerability was her greatest asset. Late one evening, looking out at the horizon from her apartment, she couldn't shake the feeling of accomplishment and growth. She had conquered her self-doubt, forged her own path, and helped her team find their voices too. This beyond foundational change was now tangible, solidified through her journey and the stories they had crafted together. With a heart full of resolve, Jamie smiled at the sky, a true reflection of who she had become. She knew this significant transformation had not just been a professional achievement but an evolution of self. She had indeed found her voice. As you reflect on this journey of growth and transformation, remember that the power lies within each individual to confront their fears, take risks, and inspire change. Jamie's story exemplifies that your voice matters. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.